Alex will kick it over to Mark, and then Mark will kick it back to me, and then I'll introduce you. So you can talk all the way through this countdown if you want. It's just there. It is live though, so there you go. And once it's started, we'll be ready to go. And we have such nice graphics, don't we? Very expensive. I don't know. Some old guy.
I just noticed the smoke coming out of the center of the logo now. Wow, pretty cool.
That makes me angry. A la cartoon. You know, it's funny, not many people noticed that. Oliver Breidenbach noticed it. He said, "Hey, I like it, but the smoke off your forehead." That's my idea of a German accent.
Did you have to try a few times to get that snarl on your face to make it look really angry? Or
It was sent to me by a viewer on Office Hours, believe it or not, and it just caught me at the right moment. And I said, I like that. I'm going to make that my logo. Nice. So I took it, centered it, and, you know, I can't really reproduce it. I'm like... Oh, that's interesting. You should say that. You reduce the color palette to like 256 from millions, and that's how they do movie posters. They reduce the number of colors, and then what happens is it sort of colorizes it, and then you push the contrast up a little bit. But yeah, have you noticed movie posters? They always look almost like really well done illustrations, but they're screen grabs basically.
Oh, I don't know that. That's pretty cool. So they take a screen grab and then put it onto make it at 256 pixels. So they force the color palette down,
and then they go to like 256. There are plugins in Photoshop where you can do it instantly, have it happen. But I just did it by hand to give it that look, and it'll add contrast to things like my shiny forehead, stuff like that. I'm going to squeeze down in anticipation of the show getting close here. And when the talking starts at 30 seconds on the countdown, we will all be quiet until the intro. Show number 92. And if anybody's joining us early, we're going to have fun today. It's going to be a little techie, but that's all right. We're going to have fun with this.
Absolutely. So is it 92 consecutive weeks so far? Or,
yeah, believe it or not, we've been at this almost 3 years.
Very cool. Wow.
And we're looking to get rich, but I don't think that's going to happen. At this rate, I'm going to be well in my grave before money becomes involved.
Don't say that.
I might as well. Are you going to preside over my eulogy, Mark? Beans. I'd love to have some ramen right now. You know what I do well with? Food coupons that are occasionally available from various vendors. Arby's used to be a sponsor of our show, and I lived off of Arby's for a few weeks there. My gut? Are you internally or externally? Yeah, nice. That's all right. All right, getting close to countdown time, so have a good show, everybody. It'll be fun.
Good show.
You can see where my dog banged me with his teeth. He's just a puppy, and he turned quickly, and I didn't zig when he zagged, and I started bleeding. You know, facial wounds you bleed very quick from. Anyhow, being quiet now.
In a vast wasteland of entertainment where radio has become obsolete, stands an embittered man teetering at the edge of sanity. With help from radio friends, he's about to embark on a global mission that would change the course of history as we know it. Broadcasting live from the secret studios on the banks of the Brandywine River in Delaware is Mitchell K.C. Hill. And up to the Great White North in Vancouver is Alexander Knight.
Hey, and welcome to show number 92 of The Last Angry DJ. My name is Mitchell K.C. Hill. I'm the old guy that used to do radio back in the 70s and 80s, and I had a blast doing it. But things have changed. It's not the same way as it used to be in the golden age of broadcasting. Today, it's a whole different ballgame. And here to keep me straight on my answers and remind me that a number of decades have passed since I was a big-time DJ is my cohort, Mr. Alexander Knight. Here he is, Alex, with his famous smirk. There it was, just checking.
How are you, Alex? Alex, right away, I have to take offense. Radio has not even begun to reach its peak. Radio is about to enter the world that it hasn't seen before, and we're going to talk about that today.
Put that fence
Mitch,
back.
What are we talking about?
Well, we talk about all things radio back in the day and how it's changed. You know, the golden age of radio was really kind of like centered around the 80s. So decades on above and below it seem to have been, significant. But we enjoy that, and we enjoy your questions, as Mark was saying. If you want to ask a question of the show, just send us a note to ask.thelastangry.dj.com. And what will happen at that point is you'll get that little QR code there where you can get into Mukana, and you can either ask a question or ask a question, or you can make a comment in the event chat. So either way is good for us. We'd love to hear from you as the show progresses. We welcome all of our guests to come to the live portion, not the after audio-only content. But I'm very pleased to have a guest on, Lux Narayan, who's here from StreamAlive. And Lux, welcome to the show. My question for you, first of all, is how do you quickly explain what StreamAlive does? It's a very interesting name. Tell us what it is.
Hey, thank you for having me, Mitch. It's an absolute pleasure. So, my answer changes depending on who I'm speaking to. If it's someone from a corporate sense, I tweak it slightly. So, and if it's someone who I know is a streamer on Twitch or YouTube, it's a bit of a different version of the same thing. But it's essentially the same proposition, so to speak. But I say, hey, have you ever been in a Zoom meeting with about 30 other people and the presenter goes talk, slide, and most people go, yep, story of my life. And I said, that's what we're here to change. We want to change that in the easiest way possible to make what are typically one-to-many sessions and monologues into dialogues and conversations. And then I jump into how we do it and stuff and all of that. Yeah.
And what's interesting, if I can draw a parallel to it, you could tell me if it's a good application, is that in the old days, here goes the old day reference here, because I'm the old guy, we used to interact with our listeners via a phone. We'd get we'd had a request line or a hotline, and people would call. In my case, I still remember the number at the first station I worked at. It was 764-5300. Please don't call it, because I think there's some poor old lady in a nursing home that got stuck with that number. But we would respond to, their requests. They'd say, hey, can you play Ben by Michael Jackson? Or you love your show? Or what are you wearing? Or, some other silly, hey, you don't look anything like you sound. I said, well, my mom said I had a face for radio. But anyhow, that was the way we used to interact. And now things are different. And I'll go over to Mark Giuliani, who's here to keep us straight. He runs a talk show on a series of radio stations in the East Coast area near the Delmarva Peninsula. Mark, how do people interact with your shows in particular? They don't use a request line so much anymore.
Well, it's really interesting. So we have 3 live and local shows a day, and one of them from 9 to noon, we have taken and made about national topics. So it's political, it's about national topics, and it's allowed us to, rather than just have one caller at a time talk to a host, it allows us to have multiple people chatting within what we call Dial, our digital interactive audience lounge. And it allows them to chat, it allows them to ask questions, it allows them to chat with the host and the guest. So it makes the communication become much broader than the older technology did with phones and a host being able to, answer 1 or 2 calls during a segment. Now the conversation just flows regularly throughout the whole show.
I would say the first rub on that operating system is, what about the people that aren't utilizing your particular application? I think you're using a version of Mukana for your Dial application. What if they're not using it? Maybe they are used to using Facebook or YouTube or whatever else out there. Is there some kind of glue that can tie all these things together? And I'll run over to Lux now and say, is it possible that StreamAlive can tie multiple social media together so that you don't have to have one app, but you can have your app that covers all of these things? Is it possible it works that way?
Short answer, absolutely. And Mitch, it's funny. You actually went directly into the heart of the main thing that we aim to solve, which is friction, right? So around the pandemic, I had this project I was doing at that time. There was this book in my head which I was writing, and I didn't know the first thing about writing a book. That's a book. It's called Name, Place, Animal, Thing. I didn't know the first thing about writing a book, and so I attended these online courses to learn how to write, edit, and market a book. And these were online courses. You might read my book at some point and say he still doesn't know anything about writing a book, but that's besides the point. So I attended all these online courses, and these were 6 courses that I paid for, and they were delivered over some on Facebook Live, some on YouTube Live, and most of them on Zoom. Right, class sizes from 12 people to 1,100 people. And one of 3 things would happen. Either the presenter would just keep going, talk. People would wait for a recording and watch it later because there was no difference between the recorded and the live experience.
Right.
Or the presenter would ask a question like, hey, where's everybody joining from? And 150 people would type a city in the chat, and then the presenter would call out 2 of them and ignore the remaining 148. Or a third thing where they would ask them to, scan a QR code, go onto an application and participate over there. But in all those instances, the chat was on fire. So whether it was on Facebook Live or YouTube Live or on Zoom, the chat was on fire. So the whole idea behind StreamAlive became, instead of asking people to go to a product, can we get a product to the people, ask them to interact in whatever platform they are in, and like you rightly mentioned, different social platforms, and visualize that in real time. So it's absolutely zero friction for the audience. And that's the kernel and the core thing about what we do, making it absolutely frictionless for the audience.
I'm sure that anybody that has been in a big Zoom meeting that has a chat available knows that if you've got like more than 50 people making a comment at the same time, they scroll past so fast, you miss half the comments that were there. So does your application allow that to be mitigated so that it manages the chat so that the I/O that you get from the chat side make it easier to read? Are you massaging that in some way?
Absolutely. That's a big focus of what we do in terms of, so the name is also kind of alludes to, we make the chat stream alive, so to speak. And the whole motto is, stop one-way presentations. How do you do that? I'm just going to stand up to show you my T-shirt. It says, unmute the audience. That's our philosophy, unmute the audience.
I like that. Usually we have to tell them your mic is muted. Please unmute it.
Yes, exactly. Right. But how do you unmute an audience of 25, 250, 2,500 people? You're going to have absolute cacophony if you literally unmuted them. But chat is the best way to unmute everybody because, here's the other thing, right? People are introverts, some people are extroverts, but in today's day and age, every single one of us is now a textrovert. We're very, very comfortable putting things on text and chat because that's the interface of so many different applications that we use. So making the chat stream alive is the core focus.
Interesting. And by the way, I was just going to say that there are so many parallels to what you're talking about that what we do with Mukana, when we bring Mukana in, which is just an application, it allows us to put a question in. Alex, if you could for a second, once you bring in the first question and Mark can read it, but that's an example of the output that we get from a question as it appears on the screen. And I think it's a good time to ask that question because I think people are itching to see what it is that Lux has as an application. Lux, can you share that? And I know Mark wants to read that question. So go, Mark, do your question reading thing, and then we'll go over to Lux. We're not hearing you, Mark. Look at the T-shirt that Lux has on.
Oh, that's what it meant. Do you have a demo of StreamAlive so we can see what it looks like and how it works?
Lux, over to you.
Happy to, yes. So, Alex, okay for me to share my screen? And
there it is.
Spoke too soon. I'm going to stop sharing the Zoom windows, which is the new default for Zoom screen sharing. And I think the first most common sentence in meetings is, you're on mute. The second one is, can you see my screen?
Exactly. There you go. We see it fine.
Beautiful. Okay. I'll spare you the whole 9 yards on how, happy to take you through that at some other time in terms of the actual, what you do on StreamAlive. But let's make this fun. Let's make this interactive. So I'm going to ask you for a topic. So, Mitch, if you'd like to give me a topic on, if you're doing a live stream tomorrow on YouTube or a live session on Zoom, let's pretend you're teaching a skill or educating people about radio or something. What is the topic of your live session?
How do people comment on Mitch's hairstyling?
Can I make it a little generic in terms of people's comment?
Yeah, please. Yeah? You take it. You put me on the spot there.
Beautiful. No, I love it. I've never done hairstyling on StreamAlive before, so it is a first today. Yes.
Okay. Good.
Yeah. I'm going to take some creative liberty with that. The art and science of hairstyling. I'm going to say the art and science of hairstyling YouTubers. I have no clue what it means, but we're pretending we're doing a live session on the art and science of hairstyling YouTubers. Are you okay with that, Mitch, or do you want to tweak it a bit?
That's perfect. Let's see what happens.
Okay, so one of the biggest pain points we found with for our users around the beginning of last year actually was one where people saw the platform, but then we've been so indoctrinated in a diet of talking through presentations that given a platform for listening, people's first question was, what should I be asking people? And that's where generative AI was a little helpful, because if I were to hit submit on this, it's going to come up with a bunch of interesting, hopefully, questions that I could ask my audience, and allows us to showcase StreamAlive through the narrative of these questions. So it says, hey, let's ask people what country inspires your hairstyling techniques the most, okay, instead of where are you joining from, right? Let's pick someone, we pick someone randomly and pick them out of the chat. In one word, what inspires your hairstyling creativity? In a sentence or two, how do you balance creativity and technique in your hairstyling process? So a whole bunch of questions to get us started. I could take these questions, I could ignore them, but for now, I'm going to take the easy route and just select all these questions. And now I've got something that looks like PowerPoint, but it's the exact opposite, because these slides are not talking slides, they're listening slides. And they're going to be populated by what the audience types. on Zoom or on YouTube or whatever platform you've connected StreamAlive to, right? And the best way to show you how that works is you can style it in different ways. Since we're talking hairstyling, I have to tell you that you could change the theme, the color. You can make it look all white or dark or chrome or chroma key if you wanted to key that out for OBS or Ecamm. So different ways in which you can do it. If you have static slides, you could import them in here as well. So if I had some beautiful pictures of different hairstyles and toupies and things, I could bring them all in here and upload my files here. And, I could go talk, listen as I go through these different slides. At this point, I have two options. I could actually, preview this entire session. So I'm going to preview it first, and then we'll run it live. Is that okay?
Yeah, sure.
So,
by the way, while you let me talk a second, Lux, is this AI that's generating these questions? Because it seems like it's generating its own content.
It's AI that gives you a first stab at the questions.
Gotcha.
Right, and you can change the questions if you like. So it says it's also AI to help us showcase the different features we have. Like this one is something we call Magic Maps, which essentially takes people's responses in terms of where they're joining from, or a city or a country from the chat, and visualizes it in real time. Right. So
okay, I'll pick New England. I think New England hairstyles are the best. I want a mohawk.
So let's actually run it. Since you said you picked New England, I'm actually going to change what I said earlier and run it live right now on this Zoom session, where Mitch, you, Mark, and Alex will need to participate, and we're going to pretend to be a larger audience because, hey, if you have 4 people, you don't need StreamAlive. You can literally unmute yourself and speak. StreamAlive is good when you have a double-digit number of people in the audience, but we're all going to pretend to be a whole bunch of people and put things in the chat. So let's actually connect StreamAlive to this Zoom meeting. Alex, I should have given you a heads up on this. I'm going to connect StreamAlive here, and you're just going to have a bot knock the meeting. If you can just let it in, that's probably all we need to do here. So I've got this beautiful presentation on the art of hairstyling, and I'm getting ready to present it on a platform of my choice, which today is Zoom. And all I need to do is enter the link of the Zoom meeting. And I have a weirdly named bot. I can name it anything you want, but some inside joke that I've... Did it come in, Alex? All right. And you're running this inside a breakout room. Okay, this is a first for us. We never tested StreamAlive inside of a breakout room. So, hey, we'll know in a second or two if it works or not. But good thing is nothing like a real demo. Yes, absolutely.
This is the way to do it.
So please go right ahead and type in the chat as to which country inspires your hairstyling techniques the most. Or, yeah. The Zoom chat, absolutely. Yes, please. And okay, New England, it takes it out here. You got Japan. Alex, did you type Japan in the chat? Okay, so so I'm going to go with Japan for a second here. Now, the moment you type Japan in the chat, StreamAlive puts a little dot onto Japan. Also tells me that it's 35 degrees Fahrenheit, and if I want centigrade, it's 1.7 degrees centigrade in Japan. It's 7:18 in the morning, which is very early in the morning for you to be thinking about the science and art of hairstyling. But hey, who are we to judge? Mark is doing the same thing from the UK. And I can also tell you that it's overcast with clouds right now in the UK. But this initial thing of ice breaking and asking people where you're joining from and stuff can be an exercise onto itself rather than just lip service to people's responses, right? And then you can have a lot of fun with it. We have people who make it, prove to the world that the Earth is round and fly around the world here, and then say exactly the same thing. Hey, we got Mark here. And, you could also say, if I wanted to literally unmute one of you and not sound partial, how do I pick one from among all the people who answered this question, right? So there's a whole library of what we call secondary interactions, where I could go in here and say, create a wheel from all the respondents. So what it's going to do is pick everybody who answered this question just now, which is the three of you, allows me to spin a little wheel here. And of course, at the end of every wheel, it's not a wheel if you don't have confetti. So
it's Jeopardy.
And you can say, hey, Alex, Japan, tell us why Japan has the best hairstyling options, and tell us your deep, dark secrets about hairstyles in Japan, right? You can have a lot of fun with that. And then after Alex has had his fill, I say, okay, no more Alex after this. Let's knock Alex off and spin the wheel again to pull someone else. But you see how you can make it a literal conversation, because otherwise you would have 100 people, whether you ask them or not, typing where they're joining from. Two or three would be acknowledged and the remaining ignored. And we want to turn that into its own little exercise. And Mark, since you are an architect as well, you will love this nod to architecture diagrams. So there's a version of the math as well. So different visualizations, you customize it the way you want. So this is one of many visual interactions. And the common thing to all those interactions is they are powered by chat. So it's a spinning wheel, a poll, word clouds, Tetris-inspired tiles that fall down from the top and disappear into the ether, emojis, rating polls, quizzes like, Jeopardy kind of quizzes. So a whole bunch of different features, everything powered by chat. I can keep talking and talking, but I'm going to stop now and just ask if you have any questions before I show you some of the other features as well.
This is completely, I'm gobsmacked, because I did not expect this. I figured it was going to be a chat. It was going to be a typical chat interface. I didn't realize it was going to be a really cool, PowerPoint-ish, animated, AI-generated. I can see where this becomes part of the participation as opposed to just a thing off to the side with a scrolling list of names with comments. So that's very interesting. And I guess you can change the criteria by which it's going to display information based on what the question is or the comment is. So if you want to talk about anything, whether it's what kind of desserts you like or whatever. What was that, Alex?
So absolutely, Alex. So they would self-declare where they're joining from. So in which case, I would, when we kick off our webinars, I'm going to change this on the fly. I simply ask people, where are you joining from today? Right? And a lot of other things you can change in terms of are people allowed to answer multiple times? Do you show their names as they answer? Do you start with the world, or do you know that most of the people are in North America and start with North America and then pan and zoom? Do you want to show sounds as people give their answers? Do you want a different theme and so on, right? But if you were to run a question like this, and then as people answer, you kind of jump in, you pan and zoom, you go across the Atlantic, you acknowledge someone else there. But I would simply do it based on what people are typing in the YouTube chat. The only difference from what we've done today is instead of connecting it to Zoom, I would have connected it to my YouTube channel, right? And that's possible too. So StreamAlive works with YouTube out of the box. And like you said, Alex, it works with the YouTube APIs. But of course, if someone is in Boston but says they're in Bali, it's going to take Bali and not Boston because it's based on what people say. So it doesn't check IP or anything. And I just wanted to dial back to something Mitch mentioned, which is, I've got a bunch of interactions here that the AI generated. Now, maybe I want to just go off script, in which case I could do that too. So I want to run a new interaction now because you said one of my favorite words, which is dessert. And let's say I want to ask a very deep question like, what is your favorite? I always get this wrong. Is it DESERT for the dessert, eating dessert, or
I don't
is
know.
it
I'm just
double S?
thinking chocolate cake here right now.
D-double-S, right?
Yes. Oh,
Okay.
dessert. DESSERT.
I don't want to betray my lack of spelling skills on the live stream. So, you're asking people, what is your favorite dessert? And if you can humor me and just type your favorite dessert, please. Your
I
actual
did.
dessert. Yeah. Let's just reset it again. 1 second. Could you type it again, please?
Okay.
Cheesecake. Let's get a couple more answers.
By the way, Alex is the fastest typer in this group. And parents, let your kids get a typing class while they're still in school. It's the best thing you can ever do for them.
So before we go any further, I want to make sure I understand the overall concept. We're used to the audience asking us questions with the software that we are utilizing. This seems to enable you to ask the audience questions. Can it go and allow the audience to ask you questions back?
Absolutely. So if the audience were to ask questions in the chat, StreamAlive would automatically pull those questions. And with your permission, Mark, what I'll do is actually run a simulation of that after this to show you how it would appear when the audience asks questions. So what we encourage is very often people say, hey, hold your questions till the end or enter them somewhere. Or, I've been yelled at in webinars because I asked my question in the chat instead of asking it in the Q&A tab, which was expressly reserved for that purpose, right?
Right. We know all about that.
Oh, yeah. It's always struck us as odd because, when we're talking in real life, we don't compartmentalize our conversation saying, hey, this is about work and this is about life. Let's have this in this room and this in this room and scan this QR code and go to this room. So a lot of our philosophy is just ask people to put it in the chat. So if they were to ask a question in the chat, StreamAlive's algorithms would identify something as, so after this interaction, maybe you can test it out, but it would take things as questions and then auto-categorize them as well into different bunches. So the presenter could go to Q&A every once in a while, and we'll do that in a bit. But what I wanted to show you here is something else, which is one of my favorite features, which is, let's assume I asked the audience this question on what's your favorite dessert and got all these delicious answers. At this point, I could also have fun with it, saying, let's turn all your responses into images, right? So it's AI in the service of the human voice. It's kind of augmenting it, visualizing. It's doing things you couldn't do earlier in one-to-many sessions, right? So, hey, if all of us were together in a communal table or together, okay, that's a very Picasso-ish visualization of dessert, and maybe I don't like it, and I say, give me a new image, and it's going to give me a new picture that is capturing all those responses that people gave in response to my question just now about dessert, right? Hopefully it comes in there. Oops, there we are.
There it is.
Right. So
it looks very tasty also.
It does, yes.
I'm hungry.
Me too. And we have somebody asking a question in the group. He says, is it a poll also?
As in, is there a poll kind of a feature? Is that the question?
Yeah, could you create a poll like what it was in other words, to combine what Mark was saying, let's say we came to this conclusion, there's our favorites, the people on the panel. How do we get our participant listeners to vote on those choices?
Oh.
Can that be done as a poll, for example?
Absolutely. You could do a poll. So I could create a new poll with those things, or I could do a sharp contrast from desserts back to hair, where we started this conversation.
Right.
Now, if I had this
there
poll,
it is.
Where is your go-to style? So if you wanted to type 1 in the chat, it would show, it would come up against Flatiron. If you typed 1,3, it would show up against blow dryer and Flatiron. You can go ahead and type it in the Zoom chat if you'd like.
Got it.
Just type a number. If you have multiple responses, type 2,3 or 3 and 4, whatever. It's smart enough to understand what you mean when you put those different things. So if it's right. So I'm going to type 1, 2, 3, and it should populate all those 3 polls in real time. But yes, absolutely, you could run a poll like this. And let's say at this point, if I ask a question like, can I run a poll, or what about wigs, right? I'm just putting random questions out here in the chat. Those don't do anything to the poll because they don't really capture a response. But as and when the presenter goes into what this feature that we call quick questions, StreamAlive shows anything in the chat that smelt like a question. So if you notice, both these questions don't even have question marks, but they are the only things in the chat today that the four of us have typed that are questions. Nothing else is a question. So if you wanted to try it out now, if you want to type a statement, it will not pick it up. Hopefully it doesn't, famous last words otherwise. But if you typed a question, it should pick it up over here.
Are we allowed to change the subject?
You can ask any question you want. So anything that you ask is as long as it's semantically a question, it's going to show up over here.
And is in good taste.
And it's in good taste.
Or tastes good. Okay.
Nice. I like what you did there. You jump back to desserts. But the other thing that happens here is also takes thematic similarities among the questions. So it says there are some questions about fashion. 2 are about fashion, which is how do people without hair become stylish? What about wigs? These are all questions. And as you get more questions, it will cluster them saying, these questions are about streaming, and these are about talk shows, and these are about something else. So it's going to look for themes within the question. Mm-hmm. So you could say, okay, I'm going to address all the fashion questions first. I'm going to answer the question about wigs, and then I'm going to answer the question about how people without hair become stylish. And then I can go back to all my unanswered questions and just focus on those. So this is kind of how we would handle Q&A.
Now, do the people participating in the chat, so to speak, need to be in the Zoom meeting to do that, or is there a separate app or website that they go to interact with this?
They just need to be in the Zoom meeting if you're running this on Zoom. And
okay.
With your permission, what I'll do is actually exit this from the Zoom meeting, and you'll see the bot which had joined with the express purpose of reading the chat and visualizing it is now going to leave this meeting. What happens at the end of this is I'm just going to go back to my home screen here. Pull up that presentation that we just did. If I were running this on YouTube, Mitch, to your question, I would simply say, I want to present this on YouTube.
Got it. I see where that was.
And in that case, this is connected. I've pre-connected it to my YouTube channel where I don't have any scheduled live streams. But if it was connected to your YouTube channel, it would have shown the current live stream that we are on and allowed you to connect to that. Of course, you will need to keep chat enabled for people to participate.
Yeah, our chat currently is not enabled. We use Mukana exclusively. So that's that. This is way more than I expected in terms of the capabilities. And I love the idea that if I'm having a bad day, trying to think of concepts and things and how to arrange them, this seems to do a good job of helping arrange my thinking so that I can make sense and get people involved in the program. So that's very interesting that it can do that. What is the average? We had somebody mentioning that this seems like a rather complicated interface. I think it's not necessarily complicated; it's just comprehensive in terms of the capabilities that there are. If you wanted to just use really basic stuff, how would you do that? Is there a way to do it, or you get the whole Megillah when you're doing using StreamAlive?
It's very easy to do it with really basic stuff. So what you would, let's say, this is my first time in StreamAlive. I'm here and I want to do an icebreaker. I want to have some Q&A at the end. I want to ask a question or two in the middle, right?
Right.
So let's say I can create with AI, which is what I showed you earlier today, or I could just say, hey, I know what I want to create. I just want to go ahead and do it. So I want to create a map and I want to ask people where are you joining from? I can leave everything. There's a lot of settings. You don't have to necessarily use them. You can just leave it as is because that's all you really need, saying I want a map.
And then the output is what we're seeing in the screen in the middle.
Exactly. Right.
Okay.
And then let's say, I'm going to show you one of my favorite features, which is this one. Let's say I'm running a stream on what on AI in radio. I have no clue what's going to come up with that, but I'm asking people, what is the future of AI in radio, right? Random question.
Good
I'm just
question.
encourage people, right? Encourage people to type answers in the chat, and I'll show you how that gets visualized. And at the end of it, I just want to pick somebody. So I want to say I want a winning wheel, and I want everybody who participated in my question on what is the future of AI, and just pull them up and put their names there automatically. And that's it. I've actually got 3 interactions, and maybe I want one for Q&A at the end to show all the questions that people might have asked. So I've got 4 interactions, and that's all I need to do, really. I mean, I could use the same thing of 4 interactions in every single stream I have, because I probably open every time the same way. I close the same way. I might just change this question depending on what the topic is for the day, right? And this is, like, for example, my favorite questions, right? And then I could use this today on Zoom. I could use it tomorrow on YouTube. I could use it on, in person if I wanted to as well, which is the only time people could actually scan a QR code and be in a chat-like interface. I could use it on Teams, or I could simply preview it. So what I'm doing right now is running a simulation of the whole session, because sometimes you want to see, maybe you've been introduced to StreamAlive, you want to show it to somebody who's not in the room as to what it looks like. And you click on preview, it runs an entire preview of the entire thing. So it says, hey, you're asking people where are you joining from? People are typing in the chat. And someone says, what do you mean typing in the chat? And, then I could simply say, oops, second here. Too many browser tabs opened. If people say, what do you mean typing in the chat? I could open this thing called simulated platform view, saying, hey, this is what it looks like. You're showing your screen on Zoom. People are typing in the Zoom chat, and the Zoom chat is being visualized on the presenter screen in real time. What about if it's on YouTube? Exactly the same thing. People are typing in the chat, gets visualized in the presenter screen. Microsoft Teams, exactly the same thing. But that's why, one of the questions you asked in the beginning, Mitch, about friction was very, very pertinent, because chat is ubiquitous to every platform, from YouTube to Zoom to Twitch to Kick to LinkedIn Live, StreamYard. I mean, all of them have chat.
So does it have, so I guess my question is, does it have, is it just separate tabs for all the different chats, or is there like a unified interface where it's just going to basically sum all the chats and just put it into one window?
So at this point, we don't have a unified interface. So you'd have to choose between either Zoom or YouTube today. You cannot do Zoom and YouTube today. But if you were using something like Restream, which we work with as well, then that could be a unified interface, because that is going to aggregate the chat from YouTube Live and LinkedIn Live and Facebook Live and all the places you're streaming, and it would come into Restream. And in that case, we also have a Chrome extension. You would use that simply with your Restream feed, and it would do everything I showed you so far.
That's interesting.
That's
it's one of the things that we never talked about on this show, is allowing our audience to actually join our Zoom meeting. So I suppose if we allowed them to, if we put them in a specific breakout room where they could participate in the show, then we could have the StreamAlive bot in there so we can actually bring that data in, which is really interesting. I never really thought about it this way, and I didn't expect that this was going to be so data rich. So I appreciate you demoing that.
Thank you. And with your permission, I'd love to show you my favorite feature among all of them.
Go for it.
Please.
Yes.
Which is, let's pretend we're doing this question on what is the future of AI in radio, right? And this, I mean, I'm biased, but I think this is amazing. StreamAlive is also simulating answers to show me what my session might look like if people actually gave well thought out, nuanced answers. So it's simulating a full live session right now for me, because one of the biggest pain points for us as a company has been showing people that this is another way to run live sessions, right? So we needed to show them the whole enchilada to say, this is what your session can look like. But if I were running a real live session with, where I ask people, hey, what's the future of AI in radio? And they type these responses on the Zoom chat or in the YouTube live chat, those responses would come on my screen like Tetris blocks. They would fall down, and then the last one would disappear. And if I wanted to, we talked about radio in the beginning, right? Where you have call in and you have
Right.
people calling in. But I mean, I've been one of those people who, as a kid, called into a radio station and I was on queue, and then, I'd call in 10 times, and then maybe 1 in 15 times or something, I might actually make it into being heard. And then by the time I come on air, I'm so jittery and stuff that I've forgotten what I wanted to say, and I sound like an absolute fool at that point. But
by the way, Lux, we never took requests. We would claim we were going to play your song, but we never did. Just
oh,
let you know.
okay.
But that's
Even
the
to this
music
day, we haven't
format
played that
of
request
radio.
you called in.
The news talk format of radio is completely different. It thrives on the calls. I mean, we have one afternoon show that's too fast to do what we do on the morning show because there's call after call after call after call, and we just don't have the staffing, the resources to manage all of that chat and help the host do the show.
Well, you need a call screener, and then you would need a producer to maintain. But I see an inkling of or sparkle of an idea here, because it seems like StreamAlive in itself becomes the director of the show and will take it wherever it wants to go based on the feedback it's getting from the participants. And that, in essence, is what talk radio can be. You're not really directing the show from a rundown outside of the StreamAlive. StreamAlive is kind of like taking you where you want to go and giving you a visual representation of it. So that's interesting. So I'm having a hard time wrapping my head around the capabilities. If anything, you have too many things that it's offering us as opposed to some individual things. So maybe, as a feature request, a light version where it's stripped down to the degree that most of us small-minded radio guys can get into it or understand it. And then, if you want to get the full Monty in there, then you can add all those capabilities later. Not to tell you how to run your business, but just making a suggestion.
Could you go over what you think in your mind the average radio station would need in terms of people, resources, to run a talk show where you have callers calling in from mostly local callers, but you do get callers that are listening to you on a stream and call in from around the country. So typically right now in radio, you have a host who's operating the board. Used to have an engineer do that. That's been consolidated down to the host doing that. And the host is answering the phones and screening the calls during commercials. And then, so you have one person doing all of this. And it seems to me to be overwhelming to then add this to that same host who's trying to do a live radio show.
Well,
so
I want to jump in just a second and say that Lux did not create this app specifically for radio.
No,
we're just thinking that radio might. I'm just to his defense, because I don't want to put him on the spot here, but it's a generalized app for people to interact with a host of a show. So maybe this is an application you haven't considered. But Mark, I'm sorry, I just wanted to interject.
Yeah.
That.
So usually we probably have 50 to 60 people when we do it digitally, and we use dial or Mucon or whatever you want to call it. But when we do old-fashioned radio, analog radio, so to speak, there's just one host handling probably 30 calls over a 3-hour period. So is that, in your mind, do you need a separate person as a technical director or a producer, whatever you want to call them? It doesn't matter. How many people would need to handle a show with 50 to 100 people?
So, like Mitch said, the original thinking was not with radio, but I think the construct is similar.
But it's a live event. Think of it as a live event.
Right. It's a live event. It's one to many.
Right.
And assuming that the methodology, so people would interact by calling in, or is there a methodology for them to actually put things into chat? Because that is a fundamental.
Well, that's a really good question. So currently the way we do it is 4 days a week for the entire 3-hour show. It's all done by phone calls. We'll take phone calls. There's no video, but we still use dial because people love it. And we still use this whole digital interactive. On Fridays, the first hour is a traditional radio show, but everybody who knows how to get in, that wants to get in digitally, still pipes in digitally. But the last 2 hours of the show, so from 10 a.m. on the East Coast to noon, it's only digital. No phone call. We don't even answer the phones. people will call and call and call. We just don't answer because we say we want to focus on allowing the host and the guest to see the questions and answer them.
Got it. And how do the questions come in those 2 hours, or are people not?
So they come in. The people have a version of the software that's public. They click the link. Up pops the screen. It has a place to chat, a place to ask questions. It shows the questions and a place to vote on the questions. And so they can see the whole program in a limited way. So they don't have any control about how to move things around. There are other ways to do that.
And essentially, they're not required to be in on the Zoom call in order to be able to do that interaction.
Right.
They could be, but they're not. And I think that's something.
And we don't
explore.
let them in the Zoom call at this point. Yeah. But after listening to this, their gears are turning about how we could let them into the Zoom call too.
Right.
Thank you so much for explaining that, because that makes me. I'm just going to share my screen again, if that's okay, Alex. And
yeah, please.
And once again, I'll share it with the Zoom windows on. I have to remember how to set up each time. And I'm just going to switch. Oh, by the way, I was just about to show you this as well. Let's assume, just to wrap the thread on this one, let's assume we ask people this question on, future of AI in radio, and we got all these beautiful answers from people. And you want to summarize people's answers, right? Because think about it. So far, when you ask a crowd or an audience a question, you ask them, if it's in real life, you ask them simple binary questions like, hey, do you agree or not? Put your hands up if you do, put your hands down if you don't, right? Or if it's digital, you ask them a poll. Do you like apples, oranges, or bananas? A, B, C, answer the poll. Right. But people don't necessarily always think in a constrained way. They sometimes have open-ended responses like this. So this is the reason I mentioned this is one of my favorite features, not just because I'm a Tetris fan and I love the visualization. Both my co-founders are actually, they were champions in Tetris in college 30 years back, and this is a hat tip to that. But the reason I love this feature is I can press this button here. And, we did the earlier thing where we did a visualization. You can also do a summarization. So you could say, take everybody's responses to this question and summarize it. So it's taken all the 50 responses I got and said, okay, this is what people are saying about the future of AI in radio. They're talking about personalization, automation, data, and they're talking about radio itself moving to becoming more responsive and engaging. 70 to 80% of people believe that AI will significantly enhance radio. And there are a few alternative voices who say that it will not have a transformative experience on the entire radio experience. But I mean, this is with a simulation of responses, but imagine in a real show, you had 100 people, writing their answers in, and you summarize those answers. So this is helping the host essentially shape the conversation based on what the audience has said, right? So when I present to classic presenters who are in a corporate sense, I tell them, all this time we've been approaching presentations like stand-up comedians, saying, we've got a script, we're going to stick to it. I know what I'm going to say in minute 3. I know I'm going to pause for a laugh over here, but maybe we should be approaching it like improv comedians, where I have no clue what's going to happen in the next minute and actually make it like a conversation, right?
I really like this. I have a few questions about this. Number one, can you say like what AI service are you using to create these summaries?
So it's all some version of an open AI ChatGPT, but we're using the more recent ones, the latest ones for the generation of the questions, and we're using older ones for the generation of the answers and the simulation, just to keep our costs under control.
I can see this being really useful. Like some of the shows that I watch on YouTube that do a lot of audience Q&A, where they really engage with, especially for YouTubers that use the super chat function, where you can contribute money, and then if you send in a super chat, they'll answer your question live on the show. But some of the shows that I've watched where they do all this audience interaction, I could really see it being useful to be able to create a summary. If you've got a very lively chat with hundreds of people, adding their 2 cents to a particular subject, it would be very useful to kind of take the pulse of like, what are all these people actually saying, without having to read through hundreds of responses to try to get a sense of that.
That's exactly the idea. That's exactly that. I mean, capture everyone's 2 cents and add it up to something meaningful, right? I want to jump back to Mark.
Yeah, go ahead. No, I was just going to say it's very interesting conversation because it's stretching the box size that we're used to thinking of interacting, and I appreciate what you're saying about this. Go ahead. You said you had something going.
Mark was asking this question about how if that show you mentioned, Mark, where from 10 a.m. to 12 p.m. Eastern on Fridays, you said is purely digital and it's just a host and their guests, and people would be participating from Mokana or some of the where they would ask their questions over there. You could emulate something very similar here, where what you do in that case is, let's say I'm running this presentation here. I would simply run this. When I chose my platform, instead of choosing Zoom or YouTube or any of those things, I would choose in-person or other online platforms. And here's what happens with those, right? If I were to choose, let's just go with the in-person thing actually over here, because it's exactly the same thing. And this is the only instance where we create a chat of our own. So if you were to say, you want to go with this, all people would need to do is go to chat.streamalive.com, type this code, or they could scan this QR code and be in exactly the same URL as well. But if you were to do that, you'd be on your phone in something that looks like, iMessage or WhatsApp. It looks like a text with a whole bunch of WhatsApp strung conversations, right? And you could respond to the host's prompts on your phone. And those, in that case, instead of the Zoom chat or instead of the YouTube chat, those responses are the ones that would populate the screen. So people could still participate. They would be participating on a screen that they're typing in on their phones, and it's not linked to Zoom or YouTube or anything. So this is an option as well.
So if you go back to the list of different platforms that you can connect to, what does the platform labeled other, what information does it need to connect?
So just to pull that again, this one. And you said the one.
You had one, I think, that was other online platforms. So if you click that instead of in person,
it's identical to that. It does the same thing. It presents.
So you just give it the URL of the platform.
Exactly, but not the URL of the platform. This would be the same phone-based chat where people would participate off a QR code, and you would just need to show the instructions to people or tell them go to chat.streamalive.com and enter this code, and then you're in a very simple chat-like interface. So there's no software to install. Mm-hmm. It's just go to this URL and you're in. That's it.
Interesting.
Alex, do you think that this has changed your mind a little bit on whether or not we would consider doing a public Zoom meeting where we get people to come in on Zoom as opposed to watching on YouTube Live?
Well, I mean, we still have to have the YouTube stream, but I think, yes, it's definitely making me think about how we bring in the audience. I'm always that is always at the forefront of my mind. I mean, one of the things that I want, it's funny lately, I've been thinking about, well, how do we add phone calls? How do we give people the option to call in? I've been thinking about experimenting with Zoom, because Zoom actually can give you a phone number that you can dial into, and you can bring people into a meeting, sort of like an old school radio station call-in show, that type of thing. So I've been thinking about all the avenues that we can present to people, whether it is commenting in the live chat, posting questions, interacting in Zoom, all that sort of stuff. So I'm thinking about all of those things for sure.
I think you've given us a lot to think about, because we just scratched the surface of what we're capable of doing. And Lux, I'm just impressed that you have a completely different way of approaching the idea of a chat, because I really had no idea what to expect in terms of what you had. But I do know that as a radio person, radio people are looking for more ways to connect to the program in a one-to-many type scenario, or a many-to-one, if you will. And this seems to be, have some legs when it comes to being able to accomplish some of those issues. The only thing that throws me a little bit, but it might be a good throw, is the idea that the chat is going to drive the show, because in a sense your application is designed to ask questions beyond, or elaborate on the questions being asked, by the participating audience to the program, and it sort of drives where the radio show is going to go from a radio standpoint. Granted, this is not specifically made for radio, but it's has very interesting implications on what it can do, because I think that all of us in the radio business are searching for new ways to have people participate in a live radio program, and that's the problem, is that radio is struggling to find ways to do that. Now, with all respect to Mark is getting some headway using his version of Makana, but Mark, do you see any out of the box ways that this is sort of spurring your imagination? I mean, are you getting a little inspiration here in what you're saying?
No, I am. I think that there's some interesting things that this brings in that we don't currently have. Just the way that the audience can participate is really what we've been able to accomplish with what we have. But to go the other direction and now be able to really, I just think we rely on, it's a little bit different, because with radio, you're relying on the host to drive the direction of the show. And we've been kind of experimenting with what happens when you let the audience pick the direction by how they vote. So I think there's a lot of potential here. I guess one of my questions for Lux is, an owner of a radio station who's constantly battling profitability, what do you think it would take if you had, how many additional resources is it going to take, or how many screens are you going to need to be able to see during one event of 100 people to be able to legitimately take advantage of the software? Because really, it's not just the cost of software. Now I got to go set up a whole new workstation. I got to have 3, 4, 5, however many monitors it makes sense to have to be able to, in live real time, be able to see everything you need to see.
So I, the first time you see it can be a little, to Mitch's point on, you have a light version and stuff, can be a little overwhelming, and cue the fact that you might need a lot of resources for it. But once someone has invested about half an hour to an hour in getting familiar with the ropes, you should be able to have just one person, just the host themselves running it. Because, just to rewind back to Mitch's question, I went through the presentations route using the AI and creating a presentation on hair and all of that. You don't need to do any of those things. You could come into StreamAlive, click on interactions, click on this interaction library, and that's all you need. This is like, okay, I want to run a map, run a map. I want to run a poll, run a poll. So this is a simple version of just run one interaction.
Mm-hmm.
And then it would really be Mark, coming back to your point, you would just have this running on one screen. And yes, the host would need to give the instructions to people saying, hey, go to chat.streamalive.com and enter this code to participate. Or if it's on YouTube or something and you're doing it live, then you would tell people to participate in the YouTube chat. But at the host's end, all they need to do, suppose they're asking an open-ended question on politics, they would just say, okay, I'm asking a question, the response for which is they just need to think of what response they expect. Is your response going to be a sentence long? Is it going to be a word long? Is it going to be an option? Or is it going to be, a location or something like that, in which case the map? If it's a sentence long, you just go with something like the talking tiles and you say, I want to run the talking tiles. And that's it. You're ready to go, right? Then once the responses come, it automatically populates on this single screen. You press one button, it summarizes everything. So it is designed for people who don't have any incremental resources. Most of our users are facilitators and presenters who don't have someone else helping them out.
And where I see the beauty of this is when you get into radio shows or events or whatever, where you start to have a number of people where the chat just starts to go so fast, you can't keep up with it. We've been very fortunate where the chat that we have doesn't move fast enough where you can't keep up with it. But I can see as we take off with this whole digital radio, I'm going to call it, that we're going to need tools like AI to what you've set up, summarize all of this, because there's no way we'll be able to read it all before the next break.
And John Wallace jumps in and says Zoom is such a bad platform for large events. And I think that sort of begs the question, well, what can you add to Zoom to make it work better? And this sounds like this might be one of those solutions. And that's a very interesting comment, because as a minor user of Zoom, when you get a big audience out there, again, that chat goes zooming by, just like Mark said, and you can't keep track of it because you're either participating on the platform or the panel, or you're trying to scroll back to see what interesting chats were started. Seems that you're thinking massage it and organize it in such a way.
And you're trying to do all that at the same time, not have any dead air, because you're trying to constantly think, what am I going to be saying
from a radio
next?
standpoint, I'm just talking about from a straight Zoom meeting. There's dead air on Zoom, but like on this show, we have a basic rundown that we go through, and we may drift off the target a little bit once in a while based on either a question that's coming in a Mukana or an event chat. But what would happen if all of a sudden we became hugely popular and we had thousands of live listeners and viewers to the program? We would be stopped in our tracks. We wouldn't be able to handle it. Alex, am I correct there?
You're 100% spot on. I mean, that's a good problem to have. But I mean, if we were operating at that level, we would absolutely need to have multiple moderators moderating the chat. I mean, I don't care what platform you're using, whether it's YouTube chat, Facebook live chat, Twitch, TikTok, whatever platform you're choosing to stream on, the chat becomes completely untenable at a certain level, and you can't even read it. I've been on live streams that were 500 plus people, and it's just this constant this just stream. You can't manage it. You can't handle it. And this is where I think having specialized tools where you can take back control over that, whether it is Mukana or whether it's StreamAlive or some other tool, to really take control over that, because those platforms are just they become trash pretty quick when you have hundreds or thousands of people commenting in real time. So I think you need a way to kind of parse that information out, display it in a way that actually makes sense, so you can actually understand what people are actually asking you on a show.
Yeah, you need to aggregate that. Lux, do you have a comment on that?
Yeah, I what Alex said just reminded me of a fascinating article I read last week in the New York Times about TikTok Live. And they were saying how TikTok Live is the new QVC, and they were drawing a lot of parallels between the two. And what I found especially interesting was on QVC and Home Shopping Network and all of that, after a while they say, hey, let's get to the phones, right? And you're waiting to see what people are calling in with and stuff. And over here, they say, let's get to the chat. So it's like almost exactly the same format, and the phone is replaced by chat in a way. And just to Mark's point as well, something that triggered in my head was some of the streamers we work with who stream on Twitch and YouTube. Interestingly, they like the interactivity and stuff. You can imagine, a Twitch streamer or a YouTube streamer having a lot of fun with their audience using these features that I just showed you. But interestingly, some of them are of a reasonable size where they have sponsors and others sponsoring their shows, and they want to give the sponsor a report afterwards on what people said about a sponsor's proposition or something else. So something we didn't touch upon over here, but there's a whole analytics module that comes up at the end of a whole session. So just for example, this is a session I did about a month ago. I did a workshop on the 11th of October. And if you ask me, hey, Lux, how did the workshop go? I could tell you exactly how it went, with 48 people giving 770 comments on Zoom. And at peak, it was almost a comment every second, because the chat was on fire. Each time I ran an interaction, which is these colored bars, these are the different interactions I ran, and it generates an entire report at the end of it. So Mark, to your point on profitability and shows, I just think there's something interesting here. Again, it wasn't designed for radio, but maybe there is something interesting in the area of reporting for sponsors, after a show. Like Mitch, you were joking about how you ate Arby's for a whole bunch of time because they were sponsors one of the shows that you were doing. But imagine asking people questions around their proposition. As something comes up, and then you actually generate a report and take it back to the sponsor in terms of how people responded. That could be interesting too. They get free opinions, free research as well.
Imagine if I'd actually given those coupons away instead of eating them myself, how much happier people would have been. But I love myself a beef and cheddar once in a while, and unfortunately, once in a while, turn it every day. So what are you going to do? Alex, did you have a comment?
The reports, that last thing that you showed me is really interesting, because I I'm always fascinated by data, and that's something that I spend a lot of time with in my day to look at that stuff. Whether it's the YouTube analytics backend or anything that I'm working with in my personal or work life, I think that's really critical to understand what's actually going on. So I didn't realize that StreamAlive had those reports. So that's really interesting. I'm gonna have to play around with that.
Sure. And Lux, where do people go if they want to learn a little more about it, or perhaps buy your product? Is it available yet, or is it still on beta? What's your status?
Oh, it's very much in production. We have thousands of users who are using it every day. StreamAlive.com is the website, so StreamAlive. And you can sign up for a free version of the product. Please don't buy it yet. Go there, sign up for a free version, play around with it for up to 10 people in your audience. It's absolutely free. You can do everything I did today on the show with a free version. And use it on a Zoom session or YouTube or wherever. And once you're happy, feel free to go for a plan if it serves your purpose. But we just want more monologues to be dialogues and more conversations.
And I think that you've accomplished that, and we want to thank you for coming on and demonstrating. There's a lot of pressure on doing a show like this, but we always feel like it's fun to keep it real. If things don't go exactly to plan, maybe someday we'll strike gold when we least expect it. I think you've got a little gold there that the radio people should pay attention to, and perhaps we can incorporate a little of little of that magic that you have into what we're doing. I think Alex's gears are turning. I'll let him speak for himself. That maybe this is how we get multiple Zoom participants to be able to be on the show and have it make sense. Because as John Wallace points out on our chat here, having a lot of participants on Zoom is a little unwieldy. But we're a new and young show that doesn't have millions and thousands of viewers, either live or otherwise. It's manageable. So maybe we're a good place to develop some ideas or an application for your product where it would not otherwise be considered, because we're kind of coming out of left field with the idea of radio. But radio is one of the oldest interactive mediums out there, and it predates social media as we know it. So thanks so very much for coming on the show and demonstrating your product. I think you need to come back. I think you need to come back down the road a little bit as we figure out, because we have a lot to absorb from what you've shown us. So we have to be the ones to decide, hey, we like that and we like that, but could you incorporate a little more of this? And you probably have the answer for that. So thanks so much for being here.
Would love to, and thank you for having me. This was fun. This was didn't feel like a demo or something. Just felt like a conversation with old friends. So this was fantastic.
Well,
thank you.
Isn't that nice? That's the nicest thing you can say about anybody that has a talk show or a YouTube program. A conversation among friends. So we think you're our latest and newest friend. We'd like to have you be friend of show. And Alex, for the rest of the folks that are poking around out there and thinking of asking questions but haven't quite come up with them, how do they reach out and tell us what they thought about what Lux was demonstrating?
Yeah, and thanks to Lux for coming on the show. We really appreciate it. If you'd like to be part of this community, there are a few ways that you can do that. We're going to talk about that right now. If you scan that QR code that's hovering over my left shoulder there, that will send you into our Discord community. That's the best place to chat with us after the show. We've got all sorts of great channels broken up by topic. We can talk about the show. We can talk about things you want to see us discuss on future episodes, guests you want to have on the show. And there's also other great channels. There's stuff to talk about movies and all sorts of stuff. So definitely check out our Discord server. I'll leave it up on the screen for just a minute. Another way that you can contribute to our community is you can make sure you subscribe on YouTube to ensure you get every episode. We live stream the show every Sunday at 2 p.m. Pacific. That is 5 p.m. Eastern. And of course, if you prefer to just listen to the audio version on demand, we are available as a podcast anywhere where you get your podcasts. We're available on all platforms, including Apple, that's Google, Spotify, TuneIn, Stitcher. You can ask your Amazon Alexa device to play The Last Angry DJ. That will work for you as well. And of course, you can also donate by going to patreon.com/TheLastAngryDJ. That is patreon.com/TheLastAngryDJ, and become what we call a coffee supporter at $2 a month. A mere $2 a month. What can you buy for just $2 a month? Not very much, but that can get you a membership to The Last Angry DJ. Also would like to give a shout out to the fine folks at Boinks Software. that make Mimo Live. That is the application that we're using to provide this show to you today in stunning 4K 30 on YouTube. We couldn't do the show without you, so thanks to Mimo Live. Back to you, Mitch.
All right, thank you, Alex. And again, Mark, what did you learn today as a radio guy?
Wow, this was a great conversation. It really was, and it went smoothly. I mean, it wasn't like we were following what we wanted to talk about. Everybody just kind of had a conversation. It was great.
That's why I think we excel. It's just having a talk in our little Brady Bunch squares here of Zoom. But any way you can make Zoom even better is great. And that's just one of the objectives here. And I think that Lux was able to provide some answers to how we can improve upon that in a way that I'm completely gobsmacked. I like that English term because it just completely surprised me. I had no idea what to expect, and here it is. So once again, Lux, thanks for being here. All you folks that are joining us, thank you so much for being here. Always reach out to us. We really like to hear from you, and we especially like it when you hit that subscribe button. It's over here. Subscribe button or like button, and tell us how much you like the program. That gives us the inspiration. We're quickly approaching 100 shows. Alex, 100 shows, and our third year of being on the air doing this. So obviously we have something to talk about. We seem to be continuing to do that, right? Good.
Absolutely.
All right.
It doesn't feel like we started this show very long ago. It's just we are going, as of January, we are going into our third year. I think we launched the show back in, was it March, late March, April, 3 years ago? So yeah, it's been
just after Marconi invented radio.
We're still here, so
we came on
onwards and up. We're always looking at ways to improve the show. And if you have any feedback, I know I mentioned Discord earlier, but please do let us know. Send your thoughts on things that you think we can do better, and we will take it very, very seriously.
And we want to also thank John Idelson for suggesting Lux, and Lux for coming on, because I'm sure he was scratching his head a little bit. Radio, I don't know, but maybe we've lit a little bit of fire there in terms of another great application. So thank you very much. Reach out to us. Tell us what you think. Subscribe, like, all those good things. And in the meantime, we'll see you next week. Take care, everybody.